social media. There we go. Good. It came up on Boston Black News. Let me just make sure it starts, and then we'll start talking. Yeah, still waiting for it to start. Here we go. It's on. So we're good. We're on. We're moving. Okay, I want to welcome everyone who is watching us and listening to us on the Boston Praise Radio and TV, Boston Black News, and tomorrow WBPG-LP 102.9 FM radio. Thanks for being with us tonight. Bill Wright, Pastor Franklin Hobbs, and I will be sharing election results with you and for you. And we're also going to be talking about the districts. And I'd like to start us off with asking Bill to explain to the listening audience why there's no at-large preliminary vote during this election.
Yes, certainly, Pastor Wall. Of course, there are 4 at-large city council seats. And if there are only 8 or fewer candidates, there is no preliminary election that takes place, and all of those candidates automatically go into the November 7th election. That was the case this year when Councilor Michael Flaherty decided not to run for re-election in time for the Elections Commission to make that change, and therefore all of the 8 candidates for district city council at large.
Tonight.
Hello?
Go ahead. That's I'm trying to turn the sound off of my iPad. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So all of the 8 candidates at large city council automatically go into November 7th election.
Now, Pastor Hobbs, you had an opportunity to interview some of these candidates. So as it relates to district number 3, did you interview any of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candidates?
I interviewed all but one.
Okay. So let's talk about Barry Lawton. You interviewed him. What was your general impression when you interviewed him, and what do you think his chances are in landing a opportunity to be in the final election?
Well, I think he certainly stands a strong chance. I mean, he's run a few campaigns before. He's been out there, and so I think he stands a really strong chance. He's one of 2 Black men out of the 7 candidates that are running for it. Again, he's been a school teacher. He actually went with us inside the prison as well. I'm sorry, I should say the jail, House of Correction. In fact, all of the candidates did, with the exception of Jennifer Johnson. She couldn't find parking, but she tried to, but they went behind the wall. So yeah, I think he stands as good a chance as anyone. And I think he stands a strong chance. The fact that he's run many times, not many times, but several times before. His track record in terms of his political different positions, and I just think he stands a very strong chance personally.
Right. Bill, do you know Rosalind Warren or Jennifer Johnson, Ann Walsh, Matthew Patton, or Joel Richards? Any of these candidates for District 3?
I don't know them as well as I know Barry Lawton, but I know things about the candidates. John Fitzgerald, of course, is the son of former State Rep Kevin Fitzgerald.
Okay.
And Joel Richards is a school teacher who I believe ran in District 4 2 years ago against Brian Worrell. And Jennifer Johnson, I believe, is a longtime activist in the Dorchester community. Barbara Warnham, I think, is a first-time candidate. There's also a candidate whose last name is Patton. I think his first name might be Paul. and I think he's, again, a first-time candidate. And Ann Walsh is a candidate who actually received a Boston Globe endorsement for District 3.
Well, looking at the candidates for District 3, I was looking at where they lived, and I was looking, District 3 is somewhat of a large district. John Fitzgerald comes out of the Adams Village area. Jennifer Johnson comes out of Meeting House Hill. Barry Lawton is Savin Hill. Pat O'Brien's Adam Village. Matt Patton, Savin Hill. Joel Richards in Fields Corner, and Rosalind Warnham in the Ashmont area. So do either of you know, in the changing of the maps, if District 3 was touched significantly at all? If you know?
I would say yes, it was. In fact, the maps were really contested, and Frank Binker was one of the big contest stores because it was going to break up that District 3 area, significantly. It's my understanding, and interesting enough, so Joel Richards was in District 4, and as a result of the map changing, now ended up in District 3, which qualified him to be able to actually run for District 3, because when the lines were previously drawn, he was in District 4.
So I received an email today from a person who's well known to both of us, went to vote, and he's a super voter, and went to vote and was told this is no longer his district.
Wow.
And he was frustrated. So he wanted me to know that, because he felt that if it happened to him, it probably could be happening with many other people. Bill Wright said, well, if that happens to you, what you do is that you say, let me vote, and you guys sort it out once it gets downtown. But I'm assuming that there are some people who would not be that patient, especially people who are not super voters. They may vote every once in a while. Being turned away could mean that that's it. They're not going to contest. They're not going to challenge the poll worker at all. Have either of you heard of any complaints about people going to their regular polling place but told not that they couldn't vote?
I have not heard about any specific complaints of that, but of course we do know that for months there were disputes about what the map would eventually be.
Right.
And they kind of went back and forth between committees and so forth before a map was determined that the judge okayed at the point where they needed to get it done in order to actually have the elections.
So when we look at District 5, District 5 is my district, and Ricardo Arroyo's people were all over the area here. And Jose, I'm trying to pronounce Ruiz. Jose Ruiz. He wasn't he the one, or is he the one that was endorsed by the mayor of the city of Boston, or was it Enrique?
That's Enrique Pepin.
Okay.
Endorsed by Mayor Wu.
Okay, so what was this District 5, you talk about being political, was very political. So what was the reason that the mayor said she was going to endorse Enrique Pepin? What's the reason for that? If you read anything.
Right. Well, there's also a candidate from Mattapan named Sanon, also in that race.
Right.
Who was run before. And the mayor, as you know, has sponsored several candidates in this year's city council elections. And there was, of course, the dispute about the district attorney's race last year and Ricardo Arroyo's role as a candidate for that, which, as we know, part of that involved Rachel Rollins, the U.S. attorney, who ended up having to resign her position. And Mayor Wu endorsed Pepin, who, interestingly, much like the at-large candidate she sponsored, Henry Santana, relatively young individuals. I believe that Pepin is about 27 or 26 maybe, and Santana is 27. And so, of course, the mayor, like any mayor, is trying to get people onto the council who may favor her positions and policies, and both
Right.
of these individuals work directly for the mayor.
Right, right. Do you think that Ricardo Arroyo can overcome all the negative press about him and his relationship with the former federal district attorney? Do you think that he can overcome that? Do you think people still have confidence in him, both of you guys? What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly his family has, of course, been in politics for a very long time. His father, Felix Arroyo Sr., and his brother, Felix Jr., who have been a city councilor. And one of the things that might be beneficial to him in this race is that the candidate Pepin is Dominican, and I believe that Ruiz is Puerto Rican, and of course, Ricardo is Puerto Rican. So it sounds like there'll be some split among the various Latino communities in that district,
Right.
which could help Ricardo.
Pastor House, what do you think about Ricardo's chances with all the negative press?
I mean, I think he can. I think he can still win. I mean, again, it certainly. People, I don't know. I think people are pretty forgiving. I don't know. It's been a little bit of time now, so I don't know. I think he certainly can.
Right. The big question is, did all that happen to him translate beyond just the newspapers, but was it in the community? Did people who are not reading the papers, listening to the radio, if they didn't know anything about it, all they know is that this elected official has helped me and helped my family. There were some stories about City Council Ricardo Arroyo and the number of people that he has helped with many struggles that they've been dealing with. So those people don't care about the allegations. If you can provide, what do we say, constituency services, and that information goes out to a lot of people, that can make a difference in your being able to win the race. Jean-Claude Sanon, I know him. This could be the third time that he's run for public office. I've seen him driving into the radio station in the church. I've seen him in Mattapan Square with the signs. He really wants to win this. Obviously, he'd be representing the if I'm correct, the Haitian community. Do either of you know much about Jean-Claude Sanon?
Well, again, I know he's run before, and then of course he is Haitian American, and that's of course a very strong, politically astute community. I don't know right now what the numbers are showing, but when you mention Ricardo Arroyo, you have to keep in mind that much like in the past, the Bowling family with 3 elected officials, the Arroyos have had 3 elected officials as well. So that's something that benefits Ricardo, because supporters of his father and brother will likely be still supporters of Ricardo.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Now, you said that the Haitian community is politically engaged in our city. Are they well organized? Do you know, either of you? Do you know if they're well organized?
Well, Jovan Lissette has been a candidate before for, I believe, for state rep, and he's very active. I think he is involved with the Sanon campaign. And as you know, the Haitian Americans are very tied to what's going on in Haiti, and which of course we know is a very volatile political area. And if you were at or saw the Haitian parade that takes place every year, along Blue Hill Avenue, you can see the enthusiasm and excitement and activity. And of course, you have the Haitian American incumbent city councilor at large, Ruth C. Louis June, who was the person who eventually, with her committee at the council, was able to develop a map that was acceptable to the council and the mayor and to the judge. So she's another person who has risen, very strongly in recent years as a Haitian American on the Boston City Council.
Well, I'm looking at the city of Boston election department, and they have some of the results are coming in. And I'm just going to read the names and tell you where we're at with these results coming in. As Dan Janney would tell us, he would always say that the districts, the polling places that are closer to City Hall, that bag of ballots and actually get to City Hall quicker than the people in the outlaid area. John Fitzgerald has 45% of the vote. He has 1,000 votes right now, running second to him. And again, it doesn't say the percentage of votes that have come in, but Ann Walsh is 16%. She's number 2. Joe Riches is 15%, number 3. Matt Patton is 10% of the vote. Jennifer, that's 251 votes. Jennifer Ann Johnson, 99 votes, and Barry Lawton right now is pulling up the rear. But again, we don't know the percentage of the votes that are in. This is just how they're coming in. Barry Lawton has 84 votes. He's 3%, and Rosalind Warnham is 67 votes at 2%. Now, there are a lot of people who were running for District 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yep.
You have no idea what politicians will do to put people in the race to
Right.
take votes away from people.
Yeah.
I don't know Matthew Patton or Jennifer Ann Johnson. I don't know. The only person I really know is Barry Lawton. But I wouldn't put it past them to want to block Rosalind and Barry by putting people in the race and just having them run. Do you folk have any thoughts at all about that being a possibility?
Well, of course, we do know that Fitzgerald has the support of the mayor, as he is a BPDA employee. And we also know that he has a number of unions that are supporting him. One of the very interesting things to look at from the time in 2019, during that at-large race, to the end of this year, there will now have been 6 white male city councilors who have left the city council.
Yeah.
You add in Frank Baker and Michael Flaherty. That's a tremendous change in Boston politics if you consider that almost always there are white male candidates running at large. And also in 2021, that was the first time that I can remember that there was not a white male candidate running for mayor. So after this election, you could have Ed Flynn, the current city council president, as the only remaining white male candidate, Irish American, and that's very unusual for Boston, as we all know.
Very interesting. Well, one of the writers said about John Fitzgerald, which is similar to what you just said, Bill. John Fitzgerald of Oakton Avenue in Adams Hill Village, a veteran of Mayor Marty Walsh's administration in the Boston Planning and Development Agency, BPDA. Fitzgerald is currently the BPDA's Deputy Director of Operations for Real Estate. The father of 3 is the son of the late, as you said, Bill, Kevin Fitzgerald, the Mission Hills state lawmaker who passed away from cancer in 2007. So I didn't have a whole lot of background on all these folk prior to reading and getting ready for tonight. But again, if Mayor Wu has endorsed or supported John Fitzgerald and is putting her campaign people out in the streets to stand at the polls and pass out the literature and to advocate for John Fitzgerald, those things make a difference, a significant difference. So the District 3 race is a race that we have to watch. And then the incumbent, the person who was in that office might be saying, I want to go with a John Fitzgerald because I still want to have power and access to the city government, and I'll have it through John Fitzgerald. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's see if there are any other races. Nothing has come in on District 5. And again, District 5 is all the way out here in Hyde Park and Reidsville. So that's going to be coming in a little bit later. What about District 7? We have Tanya Anderson, Althea Garrison, Roy Owens, Jerome King, and Padma Scott. Most of us know Althea Garrison. We know Roy Owens. Obviously, we know the incumbent, Tanya Anderson. Jerome King. Does anybody have any background on Jerome King? I don't have.
I believe I did read that he is a white candidate. I don't know him and know much about him. And of course, that District 7 is primarily Black and Latino district in the city.
Okay. Okay. Now, do you think that some of the mistakes that Tanya Fernandez made, she hired family members and placed them in her office and was paying them a good chunk of change until she recognized and was told you can't do that. That's nepotism. So the newspapers have had taglines, and the attack of her has been in what she did and that she was fined for doing it. Do you think that will significantly hurt her chances of winning again the District 7 seat? Do you think it's hurt her?
Well, I think those kinds of negative stories in the press and actions, are harmful. Certainly, you would think that any candidate, or especially a sitting councilor, would at least run a issue by people who are knowledgeable if she has questions about whether she can hire employees, family members, or not as employees. But I think that in this race, there does not seem to be a very strong candidate who is running against her. And of course, you have perennials, Althea Garrison and Roy Owens. One of the key issues for her, this race into the future, should be the issue about Mayor Wu proposing to move the John O'Brien High School from Roxbury to West Roxbury.
Yeah.
And Tanya Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Kendra Lara, Councilor Ricardo Arroyo, they are all graduates of the O'Brien High School. And it seems to me that this move is basically like a theft of a premier high school from the Black community, putting it into a mostly white community where it would be much more difficult for students. Imagine a student from East Boston, perhaps a seventh grader who's 12 years old, who now has to travel not only from East Boston to Roxbury, but further over to West Roxbury, where transportation is not as easily available. And we know from our own experience that the MBTA can't hire enough drivers. So that would mean that kids would have a hard time participating in programs after school, especially in the winter months when it gets darker earlier. So that's something that should not happen, especially because the O'Briens is a part of the educational, spiritual community there, with the mosque that's located there, with Roxbury Community College and the Reggie Lewis Center that draws in students from all over the state for track meets and so on and other activities. I think it's essential that the city councilor fights to make sure that John D. O'Brien is not moved to West Roxbury.
Obviously I've read about the potential move. I don't know where they're at in that becoming a reality. Is that something, Pastor Hobbs and Bill, is that something that the Boston City Council has to sign off on? Or can the school department just make that decision and under the authority of the mayor, make it happen? Do you know? I don't.
I don't know technically that aspect of it, but certainly it's interesting that you never know who's behind what the moves are that the mayor makes, but there was never any discussion about moving the Madison Park Vocational School to West Roxbury. And we know that the admissions process for exam schools has changed. Certainly, if John O'Brien it becomes a West Roxbury school at the old West Roxbury High School site, there will be likely more students from that particular neighborhood going to the school. And so, again, it's a detriment to the Black community. And like you, Reverend Wall, having known John O'Brien very well, I know that he would be incensed at the idea of moving that school out of the Black community, given his particular history. And it was very disappointing to see that his three sons attended a press conference supporting this proposal by Mayor Wu.
Right, they're supporting it. Yeah, that's hard to fight if you're going to actually be going against the family of John O'Brien. That's a difficult one. I am looking at the tallies that are coming in for District 7. There's 30 precincts. 15 of the 30 have come in, so that's half of the ballots have come in. Tanya Fernandez Anderson is leading the pack with 588 votes. She has 57%. Right next to her, here, this is interesting. So she's number one, she's leading. Althea Garrison is number two. She has 203 votes. She has 19%. So again, that with half of the votes in, Tanya Anderson has 57% of the votes, and the nearest person to her is Althea Garrison at 19%. You can't go to sleep. We've learned that lesson. You can't go to sleep on Althea Garrison. You can't. I don't know who she knows. I don't know if she knocks on doors or what she's doing, but she always surprises you, right? She always surprises you in these elections. Right behind Althea Garrison is none other than Roy Owens. He has 10% of the vote. He has 111. Jerome King has 74 votes. He has 7%. Padma Antoinette Scott has 25 votes. Padma is unknown, in my opinion. We don't really know her, and that's 25 votes. So if Tanya Anderson can keep this going, she might be in the final election. Can you imagine a final election with Tanya Anderson and Althea Garrison?
Well, that'll be very, very interesting. And of course, we know that in the past, Althea Garrison, a perennial candidate, has actually gone on to the city council to replace a Northwest councilor. And she also became a state rep in a similar manner.
Don't go to sleep on Althea Garrison. So we need to we need to watch this one. Now let's go to district number 6. That's the West Roxbury district, and but only 2 of the 36 precincts have reported. So it's really insignificant to read the names and what the percentages are, but I'll do it for the sake of time. Again, 2 of 36 precincts have reported. 5.56% is in. That's really nothing. That's just opening the bag and grabbing a few of the ballots. Benjamin Jacob Weber has 334 votes. He has 52%. Kendra Lara has 215. She has 33% of the votes. And William King, the third candidate, has 86 votes. That's 13%. So you really can't gauge anything on this race yet, because with just a few of the ballots precincts reporting in. What do you think, Kendra? Kendra tried over the past 2 weeks to redeem herself with respect to what happened with the auto accident. They said that the car that she was driving did not have any insurance. That was now proven not to be true. There was insurance, so she's going to be able, the insurance company will pay for the damage. And the other thing is that the police said that she was going well over 50 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. She did her own research. She had a company do research, and they refuted what the Boston police had to say. They're saying that she was going maybe 1 or 2 miles over the speed limit. She probably was going maybe 26 or 27. So the issue that they have with her now is just driving with an expired, without a license. And she said she was in the process of having that done, but the backlog prevented her from being able to have that fixed. But it was reported that she was driving for quite a long time in the city of Boston. So I don't know if that argument is a valid one. I think it has hurt her. Do you folks think that she can regain her seat? It looks to me, the way this is going, that it could be Kendra and Benjamin in the final election. Do you think she still has a chance? Both of you guys.
I do.
Is there
Well,
any?
if this trend continues, it would seem that she would make it into the final, maybe in the second position if Weber's numbers keep up. I think what helped her a lot, even right now, is that the JP Progressives organization did
Right,
in
they
fact
stood with
endorse
her. Yeah, they did. Right. How strong are the Progressives as an organization? How strong are they?
I think they're very strong, and that district includes West Roxbury and Rosendale. But West Roxbury, of course, is a very politicized area. But JP, Jamaica Plain, those folks are very, very active, and they, of course, have candidates and so forth that they support very, very strongly. So I think that that's making a big difference tonight for Kendra Lara.
Now, Pastor Hobbs, did you interview any of the candidates in the District 6?
I did not actually. It was only District 3 and one at large. City Council, interesting enough. No, 2 actually. So yeah, no, I didn't do. And it was one, we were trying to get them all to come into into the jail in addition, because that's where the House of Correction as well as Mass and Cass. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. But no, I did not have the opportunity to interview.
Right, but you were giving some of the candidates an opportunity to be seen on our network, as well as to be seen by those who are locked up, so that they were getting 2.
That's right.
And because a person can win by 1 vote, going into the prisons or into the jails and being seen, you could have 15, 20 people who decide to vote for you, and that could make your day. That could
Absolutely.
So, and you said one of the candidates, I think from District 3, wanted to come but couldn't find parking. Who was that?
That was Jennifer Johnson. She did come, but she couldn't find parking, so she was like, "I'm out." I mean, parking is really difficult over there at the House of Correction, but it was a missed opportunity, I think, and I was really appreciative that every candidate did go behind the wall, and I actually interviewed them all with the exception of Fitzgerald.
So, so it looks like going back to District number 3. There is 18 of the precincts have reported in, 18 of 34, 52%, over half. Joe Fitzgerald is pulling away. Because if I'm correct on 3, there's no incumbents. So all of these candidates are brand new. So this race could be John Fitzgerald and Ann Walsh if the other folk do not pick up additional votes. As it looks now, Barry Lawton is number 2 to the bottom. He's just beating Rosalind Warnham, but with 127 votes, he has only 3.76% of the votes. You interviewed him, and he was interviewed on our station at least twice or 3 times. What were some of the positive things, Pastor Hobbs, that you saw with Barry? I mean, you know Barry Lawton, but as a candidate, what were some of the things that you felt strongly about, the things that he was saying that resonated with you and had you say, I want to interview him. He's a good candidate.
Well, I think just a number of things. First of all, his position that was really, some other candidates were not willing to really have a clear stance on a lot of issues, particularly as it relates to maybe say the elected school committee, for instance. Though we know that's something that clearly, again, the community has spoken and have said that that's what they want, a fully elected school committee. With that said, the mayor is insistent on this hybrid. And so, that was something that we asked all the candidates with, and he was really clear in that he felt that he supported a fully elected school committee, but he actually was open to seeing that, representation. I mean, he just was really thoughtful, quite candidly, and insightful, I felt, in terms of some real concrete kind of strategies for matching cash, for reentry. T. Michael in the People's Academy, that was something that we know that Frank Baker was a big supporter of T. Michael, and so we need someone in D3 that's going to also have that level of support for the People's Academy, and he offered that unequivocally. Those are pretty much the things I would say. His track record in terms of some of the things that he's done. He served in office. He's a teacher. He's ran for office. So just I think his resume, if you will, in comparison to some of the other candidates who've not actually been in political office, and I think he's even probably more mature than a lot of them in terms of just age. So some of the wisdom, I think, as well.
Well, I'm hoping that his numbers would increase, but as you were saying, or Bill was saying, that there's a fight going on here because there was a white voice on this district, and if a black person or person of color wins or goes to the final and wins the election, that's another white voice that's gone. And who said it? Ed Flynn would probably be he'll be the only white male if that happens left on the Boston City Council. Wow,
that's right. And another interesting thing about since '83 in the mayor's race between Ray Flynn and Mel King, we've always been looking at gaining the mayor's position for a black candidate, as is the case in most major cities in the United States. Either black or Latino people have been the mayors and are currently the mayors in the major cities. But Boston has been like that last bastion that's been difficult to have us win that seat. But it might be that rather than just in a one-to-one, whether it's say Tito Jackson versus Marty Walsh or Charlotte Garlow-Ritchie, versus Marty Walsh and John Connolly, it might be that through the city council is the way that the first black mayor of Boston elected emerges, because if you have 7 candidate councilors of color, a coalition of black and Latino, you then get to decide who the next city council president will be. You also are able to stop the mayor's budget and make the mayor negotiate line item by line item. That almost happened about a term ago while Lydia Edwards and Andrea Campbell were on the council, but we were missing that 7th vote. But once you get the 7, you do get to decide who the council president is. And we know that it has happened in the past that the council president replaces a mayor who may or may not leave ahead of time. And that person would certainly be a strong candidate in 2025 in the next mayor's race.
Well, speaking about the mayor, you both saw the story about the mayor having a conversation with the officials at Harvard, and there was speculation by the newspapers, not just the Boston Herald, but other newspapers, that she was having a conversation about her future. Did you folk read about that? Did you hear about it? Do you have any thoughts on that as a possibility? That her exiting quickly.
Pastor, I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I do have some strong feelings about that. We know that in 2021, interim mayor Kim Janey and Andrea Campbell knocked heads and split the black vote, allowing for Michelle Wu and Issa Sabi-George to be the finalists. If Kim Janey had run for council for a 3rd term, with Campbell already in the race as of calendar 2020, before you knew that Walsh was going to DC with Joe Biden, then Campbell would right now be the mayor of the city of Boston, and Kim Janey would be in their 3rd term. Now, the other thing about this mayor, Michelle Wu, is that when it was time to vote for a council president her 1st term, she voted for Bill Linehan rather than for Ayanna Pressley.
Yeah.
And when her progressive friends asked her why she did that, she said that she thought that Linehan would run the council better, which I take it must mean committee appointments or banging the gavel. I don't know. But it doesn't make sense to me that that should override her position as a so-called progressive. There are 3 things recently that she's done to go against the 77% vote for an elected school committee by the residents of Boston, especially those whose kids and grandkids go to the schools. The second thing that was egregious was when she announced that Mass and Cass was at a crisis state on a Wednesday, and then on a Thursday, she announced that she was going on a 10-day vacation with her family. I can't imagine any other mayor or politician generally who would do such a thing. And finally, she also supports a candidate for at-large council, Henry Santana, who it came out in the Boston Herald. It turns out that he has never even voted in an election in his life. No politician would do that. It's a slap in the face to the people of Boston, in my opinion.
So summarizing, what do you think all of that is saying, or what should we take? What's the takeaway from that?
Well, when I was on Larry Ellison's program back in 2021 with Dr. Bradley, Larry asked me what I thought about the candidates for mayor. And my answer immediately was, I did not believe that any of the candidates in 2021 actually had the gravitas to take on the position of being mayor of the city of Boston. And Michelle Wu was far from the experienced person. We have never had, as far as I know, a Boston mayor who was not raised in Boston. And that explains a lot of the problems that she's had in trying to deal with the city's issues, whether it's the MBTA or the school system. When the state was about to take over the school system, she said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take $2 billion to rebuild the buildings and so forth and create new schools. She totally was missing the point. Receivership was threatened because of the results for the kids in their academics, not about the buildings.
Mm. And that also was a good point that you made as it relates to any mayor, any leader in a city who declares a state of emergency. You stay at the helm. You don't leave. You don't go out of town. And because when the mayor did that, Ed Flynn decided that he was going to take up the battle, and he was out at Melnia Cass, Mass and Cass. He went out and he was surveying the place, and he was getting some good press because he wanted to see something done about it. So I don't know what that all says about the mayor, whether or not she's going to exit earlier than some people thought she would have exited. But that's something for us to watch. Looking at the precincts and the numbers right now, District number 3, which is the one we really should be watching. I thought it would be District 6, but District 3 with 24 of the precincts in, 24 of 34. So 70% of the votes are in. John Fitzgerald again is pulling away. He has 50% of the vote. He has 2,472. Ann Walsh has 777. Joel Richards has 764. Right behind Ann Walsh. Matthew Patton has 446. That's 9%. So Fitzgerald has 50%, and Jennifer and Matt Patton has 9%. Jennifer has 3%. Barry has 3%, and Rosalind Warnham has 2.61. So if this trend continues, Barry may not make it in the final, but again, that's 24 of 34 precincts. 10 more precincts come in. We're gonna know what happens here. Would either of you be surprised if Barry didn't make the final election? I thought he would.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
I'm sorry?
I would say that he's clearly the most qualified candidate in this race, as well as the most experienced. And so, we often hear about people talk about identity politics, which used to be something that Irish Americans and Italian Americans did all the time. But once Black or Latino candidates started doing it, suddenly it's a bad thing. But as far as experience and knowledge and just the talents that a resident of that district should want representing them on the city council, I think it's clear that Barry is head and shoulders above all of the other candidates. And John Fitzgerald, by the way, as a BPDA employee, he also supports the mayor's position on the elected school committee, which is something that if any group that you're leading, 77% said they wanted something, you would be a fool as a politician to go against that number.
Pastor Hobbs, I know you talked about who you interviewed, but I didn't write the names down and check them off. John Fitzgerald, did you interview him?
He was the one candidate that I did not interview because
Okay.
he actually was not even accessible. In fact, I met him, though we tried to reach him because we, again, wanted to extend the invitation to everyone. He was not responsive, but he was responsive to go inside and did meet him. And
Okay.
he then said, "Oh, I'll come on. Yeah, I didn't know what happened. I'm sorry." But again, it didn't happen because it was too close, I guess, to the actual election.
Right.
So I did not interview him, and though I did meet him inside when he came with us with the other people whom we organized to go to the Suffolk County House of Correction.
Did you have a general sense of an impression about him at all? Smart, witty, potential candidate, great candidate. Any thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I really hate to say it, but he was a little. I felt like the Little Boy Network. I think he was, kind of in his privilege, like steeped in his privilege. And again, not that he's a bad person,
Right.
but that was just kind of an arrogance almost. Or one might call confidence. I mean, it could be, a matter of perspective, but from my perspective, it just seems as though he seemed to be engaging and concerned about the folks who he was gauging behind the wall. In fact, many instances we had to pull him along, but come on, we got to go. And eventually he would come. So he seemed to be interested in engaging this particular population, which was not all of them were. So
I would say, because that's very new for them. How many of the candidates have ever campaigned behind the walls? That's new for them.
I would submit it. It is new. It is very new because quite candidly, something that we've not done before. I mean, one was what a difference the DA makes. That brought in all the candidates, and it was an isolated event. But to be able to, and that was like you had all the candidates there, and the people who were in the room where we were going from unit to unit with the candidates who were directly freestyle engaging the returning citizen. So I know President
Ron Bell is preparing an election, a guide of all the candidates, all the districts. And it would be interesting, once that's done, of something like that being made available to you to distribute with the people that you're working with behind the walls. Because again, that is an army of men and women that people probably will not take seriously until some reporter connects somebody's win to the votes that came out of the jail or out of the prison. That would be significant to see that connection.
And quite candidly, it's already happened. People like Rachel Rollins, people like Nika Elugaro. People like Senator Miranda. They will tell you that a lot of them got in because of the influence of people who are behind the wall, who even if they can't vote, people like the African American Coalition Committee at MCI Norfolk, they're organizing their family who can vote, though some of them can't vote because they're serving felony convictions.
Well,
Reverend Wall, Reverend Hobbs, the visit behind the wall you're talking about reminded me that at the NAACP convention in July, Bob Kraft and Meek Mill were speakers at a forum, and Kraft mentioned that when he went to visit Meek Mill in prison, it was the first time in his life he'd ever been inside a prison, and he had also taken Meek Mill to Poland to see the Auschwitz concentration camp site. But it just kind of, hits me that Bob Kraft must be, close to being 80 years old, and for him, that was his first time ever. I doubt you'd find many Black people in the city of Boston who've never been inside a prison to visit, or in some cases having been prisoners. And it just shows you how different the worlds are in Boston. And of course, we know about the $8 versus $250,000 disparity here.
Yeah. You know, when we were talking about Tanya Anderson and some of the things that happened to her that became public, hiring family members to serve her, paying them out of District 7. I think a person like Charles Yancey, even if he's not beckoned or asked to come in, Charles Yancey should be picking up the phone and calling people like Tanya Anderson, looking at these candidates who have great potential and asking if he could guide them and mentor them through this whole process. Because with Tanya hiring family members, that has to be something that is communicated to these counselors when they go to whatever sessions they go to. The first time counselors, there's an event that they go to where they're taught. I don't know how in depth it is, but Tanya missed that class on not hiring your family. I'm not an elected official, and I could tell you, I'm not an elected official, and I could tell you that I know that you can't hire your family members if you're an elected official. So somehow she missed that one. Looking at what's happening, 22 of the 30 precincts, they only need 8 more precincts for district number 7. So 22 of 30 have come in, 73%. Tanya Anderson is still way out ahead at 57%. She has 985 votes. Althea Garrison is right behind her at 355. Roy Owens is behind Althea at 165 votes. Jerome King, 129. Antoinette Scott has only 50 votes. That's 2%. So it looks, if this thing continues, it's going to be Tanya and Althea Garrison. I'm going to call that one the way this is going. Just a second, I'm being called. Let me see if I can mute.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. So, you know, she was talking about the mayor leaving. I mean, that's, you know, and she's denying this notion that she may be. I mean, that was the same thing that happened with Walsh. That he denied that he was going, you know, and we knew that rumblings and the rumors ended up being absolutely true. So,
right, and of course, Pastor Obbs, the mayor did not give a firm denial saying I'm absolutely not leaving my position as mayor early. And of course, that could have an impact in the November elections for those candidates who are seen as candidates sponsored by Mayor Wu.
mm-hmm.
Because
Interesting.
presumably they would not have that clout associated with being a Mayor Wu candidate if they are elected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she's been very strategic. What was that?
I was going to say that she, of course, is a Harvard College and Harvard Law School graduate, and that's another part of what happened. I would tell you that, in my estimation, the Harvard cartel in Harvard Square in Cambridge did a hostile takeover of the city of Boston by placing Michelle Wu in as the mayor at the time, due to the unfortunate knocking of heads of Andrea Campbell and Kim Janey.
What does Mayor Wu gain by leaving political office so early and going over to Cambridge? What is it that she gains?
It sounds like a retreat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
sorry. I say it's a retreat to a safe location, a place she's familiar with, and it may be that she's given it a shot, found it wasn't really for her. And if you look at the number of issues that the city is dealing with, serious issues, and particularly thinking of the T, what it meant, and of course the state runs the T, but the city has never had a situation where transportation was in such bad shape So then you have people who can't get to work on time, and those are the people who often can't afford to be late at their jobs without serious repercussions. And we do remember that last year, when in the summer they could have been doing some of the repair work, they waited and didn't start it until September, requiring them to hire out-of-town bus drivers. And we remember what a disaster that was.
Right.
Not everybody who's in these positions is able to think citywide. And when Mayor Wu, for example, decided she was going to charge North End restaurants more to have outdoor dining, it didn't seem to occur to her and her staff that the South End also has outdoor dining. Why should the restaurant owners in the South End be treated differently than those in the North End? You have to develop a citywide view of things, which former mayors, whether it's Kevin White or Ray Flynn and so forth, Tom Menino, they understood the citywide perspective. Another problem in City Hall right now is there's almost like a ceiling of 40 years. If you're younger than 40, you're good. If you're over 40, you're not. And therefore, these younger folks don't have that advice and that maturity that could be gained from having people in City Hall still in positions who could help to guide them, as you were saying, Reverend Wall, about Charles Yancey.
Yeah. Good points. Pastor Hobbs?
I mean, I would concur. I mean, you made the statement about Charles Yancey, his wisdom and being able to reach out to them. And while I think that his wisdom is valuable, I would say really the onus is really on the younger folks to reach out to the elders. And to Bill's point, I think that there is a mindset of if you're over 35, and I get youth and leaders and so forth, but the notion of an intergenerational kind of a movement is not what is, is what is being applied, appreciated, and unfortunately, I think it's really going to be incredibly unfortunate. I think that Mayor Wu it probably isn't going to run another term. Again, I think with all the things that are going on, I think she may even have aspirations of other, political stuff. I mean, many people use, as you know, Boston and Massachusetts as a stepping stone for other higher aspirations politically.
So, tell me whether or not I'm right or off the mark here. Three of the many issues that the city is facing right now. One is the crisis with the schools, and there have been a lot of predictions about the schools getting even worse because we don't have law enforcement inside the violence. And I remember last academic year, before the schools emptied out for the summer, that there were some shootings inside the schools, shootings outside the school. And Reverend Rivers took to the street and challenged the mayor, which was the shot heard around the city. And I saw Mayor Wu coming to those events, coming to the press conferences, and it was tough for her. So the school is a challenge. The schools are a challenge. Melnia Cass is a challenge. It doesn't go away. It's like you're trying to swat flies, and they just come right back with more flies, more mosquitoes. So Melnia Cass, Masson Cass is a tough one. No one really has an answer. Everybody was campaigning on, I can resolve the issue with Masson Cass. All of the candidates did. They were all there. But no one has moved the needle on that one. And then the homicides, which is primarily Black folk. It's impacting Black folk. And there's been no real serious resolve to those three. There are many more. And then you have people going to Mayor Wu's home and protesting early in the morning, upsetting the neighbors and scaring her children, and I'm sure impacting her husband. This is tough, and I just wonder if she's going to want to stick it out. I know my Karen would tell me, we're out of here. We're out of here. So
if I could say something about the school superintendent issue. When there was a search going on for a new school superintendent and the previous superintendent was leaving, one of the finalists ended up being her deputy. and the other, of course, became Skipper from Somerville, became the actual superintendent. And we know that there were other people who had an interest in applying for that position, but they shied away because they heard that the state might be taking over the system, and nobody who's in a current position at another system any place in the country is going to want to apply for a position that which they are likely to be out of in a short period of time if the state moved to take over while the Republican governor was still in place. So that doesn't get us the best quality person when those were the only two finalists.
Pastor, I'm sorry, I don't know if you saw the most recent results on 31 of the 34 precincts are in, 91.18% of the votes, I guess, are in. And Joel Richards has moved up to number 2 with 1,143 votes, 18.74%. And John Fitzgerald is 44.66% with 2,724 votes.
I have breaking news.
Okay.
Ricardo Arroyo,
Yeah.
Kendra Lara both lose Boston City Council preliminary election battles.
What? Wow, for real?
Yeah, let me go right to that. See if I can get there. So that was district number 5. Yeah,
Wow.
5. For Ricardo anyway. Let's see what those look like. Wow. Well, that's breaking news in Boston Black News.
Mm-hmm.
Enrique Pepin is coming in close to number 1, and Jose Ruz is coming in 2nd. Ricardo is 3rd. John Klon. So it looks like he lost. And again, Kendra, out of the 3 candidates, 18% of 36, 50% of the votes has William King as number 1 and Benjamin Jacob Weber as number 2. And Kendra is down at 16%. William King is 43%. Jacob Weber is 39%, and Kendra is 16%.
Wow.
That is a very significant loss.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
I thought she was at least going to make it to the final election.
Wow. I mean, they really did. I mean, the media, it's interesting that you're saying that those things, that they weren't true and they changed. So, because I haven't even really heard that story as much, though I have heard it. But what was more continuously played was, the fact that she was driving illegally and just irresponsible. And, so that negative campaign obviously definitely had some impact.
Right. It says in the Boston Globe, in a pair of stunning rebukes, Boston voters on Tuesday rejected 2 embattled incumbent city councilors, a historic vote that illustrates discontent with a dysfunctional legislative body and sinks two once promising politicians' careers. So it's over for both of them. Wow.
Wow. That's right.
Yvonne Abraham, the Globe columnist, longtime Globe columnist, she wrote about how when 2019, with new people coming onto the city council, she had great anticipation that they were going to do well. And in her more recent commentary, she said that she felt it had become now a group of clowns. And the constant drumbeat of negative stories. We're seeing the results apparently today in District 5 and District 6. And as you know, Reverend Wall, myself, having worked in politics in New York City and New York State, as well as in Boston for many politicians, when there's a problem issue, whether it's for a politician or for an institute like the Boston Housing Authority or the University of Massachusetts and so forth, the first thing that you think about is this situation survivable? And in the case of politicians, that means will they be able to get reelected based upon whatever the issue was?
Yeah.
And again, this wasn't just one thing that lasted for a month. This was a drumbeat of issues over time for Ricardo in particular, and to some extent, once Kendra Lara's situation happened, that for the reporters, it's like a dog with a bone. They're not going to let it go, and they're going to try to milk it as long as they can with the negativity. And we know, of course, there are racial aspects to these stories in Boston, of how Black candidates are treated, how Latino candidates are treated versus white candidates when they mess up, when they make mistakes, when they have problems.
Yeah. This is I am disappointed that Barry didn't make it. He right now he had 3% of the vote. 3%. That doesn't even register. So and that also shows the power of the press to keep writing these negative stories about these candidates. The press is very important as it relates to communicating to the people who are listening to them. That's why we have to take Boston Black News seriously and really find a way to gear it up, because I think we could have that kind of impact. District 3, with 33 of 34 ballots, districts reporting. It's not, the word isn't districts.
Precincts.
John Fitzgerald is 43%. Right behind him is Joe Richards, and Barry was at the bottom. So sorry that it didn't happen. This is done. That District 3 is done. District 5 is done. Wow. I don't know why John Claude Sanon is always losing. I don't know what it is that he's not able to. He's on a TV show or radio show.
Yeah, but it's a Haitian show. I mean, again, to your point earlier, I mean, that's I mean, my understanding, yes, it may be it's a Haitian station, and it may be have some English and Haitian, but the other populations that you're talking about, I mean, it can't just be the Haitian community. And I don't even know, it's certainly even not a monolith for the Haitian community, quite candidly.
That's too bad. Too bad. And then the last one is District 6, my district. District 6 is West Roxbury. Kendra actually came in last. That's an incumbent who comes in last.
Wow, that is, to me, that has everything to do with what everyone has said is the media. I mean, it's when it's negative around Black folks. I mean, the commercial media, and I have to make a distinction between which media we're talking about, because there was so much media coverage over that negative, her situations. They wouldn't let it go.
Tanya,
right,
and
we also know that.
Althea, go ahead.
We also know that a picture still says 1,000 words. And when you think about first of all, members of the Black community tend more to read the Herald than the Globe. So when someone like Howie Carr, the perennial, columnist, does a story slamming the problems of city councilors like Ricardo Arroyo, Julia Mejia, Kendra Lara, and Tanya Fernandez-Anderson, and that's accompanied by photographs of those four, they kind of, in a sense, in the public mind, get linked together.
Yeah.
And so the negativity gets connected, in a sense, in some people's minds. And again, visual is very powerful. Just as in the at-large race, Cliff Braithwaite was pictured in the first major story about the at-large race in the top tier with the 3 incumbent councilors at large, Julia Mejia, Erin Murphy, Ruthie Louis June, and the other 4 candidates in the race were in the lower tier. That picture says something to voters and to people. Okay, even though it's an alphabetical listing, it also suggests that Cliff Braithwaite is in the same category as the 3 incumbent councilors.
Wow. Well, I think our work is done. Let me just, Laura had a concession speech. I'm not going to read it. It would take us too long, but she's upbeat. She says she's transitioning from a political leader to an activist. So she's says she's going to stay involved, but I've heard that before. So that's too bad.
If I could add one thing, Reverend Wall, in the District 3 race, Joel Riches, of course, is a teacher, as is Barry Lawton was. I would suggest that in debates that will be coming up in District 3, the very first question that Joel should ask of his opponent, John Fitzgerald, is how do you defend supporting, going against the public's request for an elected school committee? Because as we've talked about before, the school committee has historically in Boston been the avenue or the pathway to getting into elected politics in Boston. And we could just certainly use the example of Louise Day Hicks, the vilified Louise Day Hicks, anti-busing person who went from school committee to city council to the United States Congress. And if you're not from a family that's political like the Arroyos or the Bowlings or the Owenses, how do you get involved in this field? The school committee was that learning process where people learned how to raise money, they learned how to organize, they learned how to get their positions out, how to deal with the media. In other cities like New York, they have political clubs. We don't have that there. So how do young Black and Latino candidates or people who are interested in being in government get involved and learn how to do this successfully? That's why when Ray Flynn changed it 30 years ago, it was a terrible thing for the Black Latino community. And I do believe that Ray Flynn recognizes that as one of the errors of his tenure as mayor. He did a lot of great things with the integration of public housing, but that was very harmful to our community. It just as before the Black Political Task Force changed it to 9 district and 4 at large, candidates had to run citywide, and no Black candidate was there from 71 to 81 in city council as a city councilor. And it wasn't until John O'Brien and Gene McGuire won back in 1980, John won before, but in 81, John and Gene both won. It's no mistake that both of them have Irish American names, and the Irish in this town, Rita Lastera, they are geared and trained to walk into polling places and pull the lever for those Irish names. I'm sure the next day, many of them were surprised to find out that they had voted for 2 Black people for school committee just because their names were Irish American names.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys for hanging out with me tonight. It's 10:16. We could pack it in. It's been good being with you folk, and we'll do it again for the final election. It looks like the Boston City Council is going to change. It's going to make another switch, and it's going to be interesting to see the race between Tanya Anderson. Again, negative press. That negative press is still going to come down on her with Althea Garrison. So, good night, guys.
Good night,
Thank
sir.
you for the invitation.
And Bill, the next time I connect with you or see you or talk with you, we're going to set up a class on Zoom.
Well, Reverend Wall, some of us are elderly. We're not always doing TikTok and all this new technology. Can you get me some AI help?
Goodbye, you two. Bye-bye.
Bye.